All right, welcome to the first ever episode of the Whiskey Noobs podcast. If you're looking for a podcast about drinking whiskey and enjoying the hobby, reviewing whiskeys, then you're in the right place. So in this episode, I'm going to go through some of the details of the show, how it's going to work, what the framework is going to be. That way you know if you want to listen or not. And then I'm also going to talk a little bit about why we drink whiskey, especially for those new folks who aren't really into drinking whiskey yet and maybe you want to get into the hobby. So to start the show, my name is Chris. I'm going to be the host of the show. I'm going to have a lot of guests on the show, but I will be in every episode. I can guarantee you that. So I've been drinking whiskey for a few years now. And I've drank enough that I think I'm pretty good at giving the reviews and knowing the vocabulary. And I've researched the etiquette, the background, all of those sorts of things. So I have a little bit of knowledge about the hobby. And then also, I haven't been in the hobby for so long that I forget what it was like to be a new guy. I think with a lot of the things you see online, a lot of the articles or videos, you see people who are so experienced that they forget what it's like to be a new guy and how to talk to the new guy. And what sorts of things that new people want to see getting into the hobby. However, I want to add that this show is not going to specifically target new people. I think it's going to be fun for everybody. However, I'm laying it out in a way that if you are new and you start from the beginning, you should be able to work your way into the hobby very clearly. But I think there's going to be enough information, fun facts, reviews, lighthearted conversation that's going to be fun for everybody who likes whiskey. So the show is going to be divided sort of into two different types of episodes. So the first type of episode is going to be like an informational, fun fact episode. I'm going to be taking some deep dives into different concepts about whiskey, different vocabulary, different things you maybe see, and also some of the etiquette, the different glasses, the different types of whiskey, all those sorts of things. And those are meant to be laid out in such a way that the newer guy can listen to them and get a lot of information and kind of find their way into the hobby, but also that the experienced guy can learn some new things they didn't know, especially if you're a whiskey geek like me and you like learning a ton of information about whiskey. That's what those episodes are going to be. You can learn all sorts of different things about the culture, the hobby, all those sorts of things. And that's what that type of episode is meant to accomplish. Now, those are going to alternate with episodes that I call review episodes. And I will be giving a 3-part nose, palate, finish review of every whiskey in these review episodes. But also, I'm going to be probably employing different tips and tricks to try to taste more of the flavor. I'm going to have a lot of guests on the show, and a lot of these guests are going to be new to drinking whiskey. That way we can try some tricks for the new guy to try to get them into the hobby and see if it works with folks that I know who don't even drink whiskey. So that's what that type of episode is going to be. They're going to be really fun, really lighthearted, and like I said, we'll be giving a review at the end. And a lot of those guests are going to be new, as I said, because I want people to experience an unintimidating review. I think when you're new to the hobby, or even if you've been around for a while, sometimes you get intimidated because you're worried you're going to say something stupid when you're talking about a whiskey. So that's why a lot of these people are going to be brand new, and they're going to say things that probably don't make sense to the super experienced drinker. And that's the idea, because there's really no wrong answer when you're reviewing a whiskey. There's no, oh, it doesn't taste like that. Everybody has a different palate. It's like your parents tell you when you're a kid, everybody has different taste buds. That's why some people like some foods and some people like others. Everybody really does have a different palate. So the idea is that you can see people say, and I'm using air quotes here, the wrong thing, because there is no wrong thing. And then also, like I said, I want to employ different tips and tricks that you really can't do with an experienced guy. They already know how to pull the notes out of the whiskey. They already know how to taste it and it not taste harsh. They're really used to it. And you just can't do that with the experienced drinkers. However, there will be a couple of experienced folks that I will have on the show who really like the hobby just like you and I do. But I think it'll be cool to see the new people try out these new tips and tricks and see if they work. So those are going to be the two types of episodes. And like I said, they're going to alternate every other week. That way you're kind of getting a little bit of both. Maybe you'll learn a little bit about a certain type of whiskey, and then in the next episode I'll be drinking that type of whiskey with my guests, or maybe by myself. I won't always have guests on the review episodes, but it will be pretty common for me to have guests on the review episodes. That way we can try out those tricks. So, like I said, I'm not going to take myself super serious in this podcast. It's not meant to be a whiskey connoisseur podcast. It's meant to be for the everyday person who loves drinking whiskey, wants to learn more about it, or doesn't love drinking whiskey and wants to learn to love drinking whiskey. That's who this podcast is for. Maybe you just want to learn more information and just have a good time. It's going to be pretty laid back. We're just going to kind of have fun with it. That way I can be a resource to the new person and just a source of entertainment to the experienced whiskey drinker. So I want to stop here before I get into why we drink whiskey. And I just want to say, if you like what you're hearing so far, please subscribe to the show, rate the show, review the show, and follow the show on Instagram at whiskey_noobs. Also, this is pretty important if you plan to listen to the review episodes. There's going to be an email list, and if you join that email list, I'm going to email you every month before the month begins. I'm going to email you what whiskeys I'll be drinking in the review episodes with my guests throughout that month. That way you have time to go out and get the whiskeys if you want, and you can drink right along with us and review right along with us and see if you're tasting similar things or if you're not tasting similar things. I think it'll be fun. It'll make it a little bit interactive. So if you want to join the email list, shoot an email over at whiskeynoobspodcast@gmail.com and just put in the subject line email list, and I'll know what to do with it. You don't even have to fill out the rest of the email. It's totally fine. And then I'll add you to the list, and you'll be notified every month of what whiskeys we'll be drinking on the show throughout that month. I think it'll be a fun little interactive part of the show. So if that sounds good to you, go ahead and join that email list. And if you like what you hear so far about the details of the show, please obviously finish this episode and then go listen to the first few episodes that I published with this episode. They all release at the same time. That way you can go listen to them and see what you think about the show, maybe before you give that rate or review, or give me any feedback over email, that same email address if you want. So without further ado, let's get into why we drink whiskey, because this is what's really important, and I think this is good for the new guy who still thinks whiskey tastes gross, and I also think some of the things I want to talk about are good for the experienced drinker who maybe just doesn't know why they like it so much. Maybe you don't care why you like it so much. You're just like, yeah, I just like sitting down to a glass of whiskey. I want to talk about a few different things, some of which are obvious and some of which I don't think are very obvious. So the first obvious reason is that it tastes good. Once you learn to taste it properly, it tastes good. So that new guy who's listening right now and's like, I think whiskey tastes gross, but I want it to taste good. I promise you, if you follow this show and follow the tricks and all the things I'm going to show you, it will eventually taste good, and it'll be a complex flavor that you are not used to tasting. That's the obvious one right off the bat, is that it tastes good once you get good at tasting it. The other thing that's pretty obvious is if you drink enough of it, of course, it's going to make you feel good. It's alcohol. You're going to get a little bit of a buzz on. However, I just want to caution folks who are getting into this that's not usually the goal. If that's what you're going into this thinking, is like, I just want to drink whiskey because it's really strong and it'll get me there quicker. That's usually not the goal, and usually the whiskeys that you're drinking are going to be kind of pricey. Although in this show, I'm going to alternate between lower shelf and upper shelf. A lot of the times once you get into the hobby, you're drinking kind of expensive whiskey, and it's usually not the goal is to just get drunk. So I do want to caution folks that's not really the goal. But also I want to talk about what's going on a little bit deeper that I don't think a lot of people say out loud or really put to words, even if you're experienced. And that is that it's almost meditative for a lot of folks, definitely for myself. And I think maybe people don't realize it, especially if you don't know a lot about meditation. But most forms of meditation, your goal is to be here now, like Zen meditation. You want to be present in the moment. You want to let go of things that have happened recently, even right before you started the meditation. And you want to not think about things that are coming up. You want to just be in the moment. You want to be focused. And it's a very good feeling to have when you kind of accomplish that with meditation. So if you haven't tried meditation before, that's usually the goal. Now, why am I saying this? Because drinking whiskey is very similar, whether people realize it or not. You're really focused on pulling out all of these complex flavors from this artfully crafted drink, and you're focused so much on that it really helps the rest of your day, the rest of your life and responsibilities kind of melt away. and it's a really good feeling that a lot of people probably don't even realize they're doing. And I think that it is probably one of the biggest things that bring people to the hobby, whether they realize it or not. It's just one of the most enjoyable parts of the hobby. And you've got this whiskey now that you've poured and you don't want to let it go to waste. So you're like, okay, now I have to take a break from my day and enjoy it. So that is a really big part of it. I think a lot of people see this with smoking cigars, tasting wine, very similar idea. So I think that's a really important part of the hobby. Another really important part of the hobby that we're going to try to emphasize in this show is the feeling of camaraderie that you get when you join a hobby such as drinking whiskey. Usually, if you are into drinking whiskey and you run into people who are also into it, it gives this sense of a bond, and it gives you something to talk about. And there are groups and forums online that you can join. This is going to be a community that hopefully you guys interact with each other and you get that feeling with each other. It really helps. I mean, when you meet somebody and you find out that they have that same hobby as you, it gives you something to talk about. So I think that's a really important aspect of drinking whiskey that a lot of people don't realize, is that social aspect. So it does create a little bit of a bond between the people. I know some people get a little bit individualist. My way of drinking it is the best way. Now, I just want to let you know with full transparency, I drink whiskey neat in a Glencairn glass, and I do not care if you drink it with 7-Up or a bunch of ice in a rocks glass. I don't care. However you like to drink whiskey is totally cool, and I just think it's really cool that we all enjoy the same hobby. I recommend that if you want to listen to this podcast, or if you want to get involved on the social media or anything like that, that you sort of carry that same attitude, and it'll bring a lot of people to the hobby. I think it's really important to not be intimidating when you're trying to bring somebody into the hobby. That's not the goal, is to sound like I know more than you. The goal is to just help somebody enjoy this craft that you also really enjoy. So I think that's a super important aspect of the hobby that a lot of people don't talk about out loud. Once again, we're going to emphasize that. Like I said, I want this to be pretty interactive. That's why we're doing the email list. And you can obviously comment on anything on Instagram. Give me a shout. I want this to be super interactive and fun for everybody involved. Or if you just want to listen to the podcast and you don't want any of that, that's totally fine too. Just listen to the podcast. But you can get out of this podcast what you put in. I'm not ever going to shrug my shoulders at somebody who's commenting on my show or gives me questions that they want me to answer, anything like that. I think that's the coolest part of drinking whiskey, is that social aspect. So if you like what you hear so far, definitely go listen to those next few episodes that I have posted, and you can sort of get a sense of the show. And from there, you can get a sense of whether you want to keep listening to the show. I hope you do, but that's all that I think I have for the show today. Thank you for listening to this episode of Whiskey Noobs. If you like the show, make sure to help spread the word by introducing friends, coworkers, or anyone that you think would be interested. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the show on your favorite streaming platform, rate the show, review the show, and follow on Instagram at whiskey_noobs to stay up to date. If you want, you can join the email list by sending an email to whiskeynoobspodcast@gmail.com. You'll then be updated every month on what whiskeys I'll be drinking on the show, so you can drink right along with me and review it as we go. Thanks again for listening to the Whiskey Noobs Podcast. Learn to drink, drink to learn. The Whiskey Noobs Podcast does not support underage or otherwise irresponsible consumption of alcohol.